Hi, it's Billy Selekane again, the man with a cup. And what is this cup? Global Conference Television. What does it say? Changing the world one inspired and transformed person at a time. Somebody like you out there is going to get this thing sent to your house, delivered by DHL, by a guy wearing a tuxedo, white gloves, on a silver platter, just to say thank you for being part of this amazing revolution that is starting in Africa. So today, we're going to be talking about one of my most favorite subjects. Let me put away my coffee. Now, most of the time, when I talk about this thing, some people say, Billy Selekane pulled it off from a magazine, some textbook, or some conferences I've attended. Now, I'm going to be talking about organizational culture. I'm going to be talking about 6 keys to building a great organizational culture. Now, what gives me the authority to talk about this? Well, a couple of weeks ago, I won an award, and I'm going to share what this award is so that you can understand that I'm just not talking from nothing. So this is my consulting company. Some of you know about it, Intelligent Edge Consulting, formed in 2011. We operate in over 20 countries around the world. So what is this award? This award comes from the Middle East and African publication. I would like to thank them very much for really considering us and giving us this award for the work that we do around the world. Now, this award is one award that honors 2 things that we do. The first one, it says, Best International Organizational Culture Consultants. It means Intelligent Edge Consulting is one of the best organizational culture consultancies in the world. Not in South Africa, not in Gauteng, not in Johannesburg, in the world. So, get in touch with us. We'll help you build your culture. The second one, it says here, Best International Global Business Speaker 2017. So, yes, I speak around the world. Speak to small companies, bigger companies, churches, NGOs, and now I'm being honored. And I'd like to thank these guys for really honoring me because, you know, it's easy for you to say, I'm good at doing this and whatever. But when people really honor you, it's a humbling moment. Guys, thank you very much. And yes, God bless. And thank you very much. Now let's do the business. All right. Now we're going to do now I'm excited. I'm very excited. So you can see that I don't just talk about these things from textbooks and blah, blah, blah. I did not win a tender. For some of you in South Africa who think, you know, to really become a successful black person, you've got to win a tender or join whatever political party or be part of whatever family. I don't want to mention names because I don't want to be sued. By the way, so we're talking about organizational culture. Now, I'm a great exponent and follower of great organizations around the world that have broken the culture code. I'll give a few examples. Zappos, which was founded by Tony Hsieh, which was now bought by Amazon.com, but is still the CEO. I mean, these guys, they really cracked the culture code. They are now rated as #1 in the world for organizational culture. Then, of course, there's Southwestern Airlines. Southwestern Airlines is one of those low-cost airlines in the USA that have been profitable for over 40 years, unheard of in the airline industry. Even after 9/11, when other airlines collapsed, Southwestern was still there, standing strong. And their founder, Hep Kelleher, said something very profound. He says, you know, all airlines have got airplanes. Isn't that fascinating? All airlines have got airplanes. So that's the tangible stuff. But he says the intangible is the most powerful. And what is the intangible? Is that which other customers or other competitors cannot copy, is their culture, their organizational culture. So you might have a great product. Somebody will reverse engineer your product, I can tell you now. They'll copy it. And how many cell phones are there? How many laptops are there? How many car models are there? How many boats are there? How many private jets are there? How many pens? How many suits? How many ties? There's a plethora of things. But the things that makes all these things that I've mentioned stand out, it is the people behind the product and what kind of culture they have. Now, this subject is a very vast and very big subject. So I'm going to just give it to you at a very high level, you know. Later on in further videos, I'll interview some people in US, in South Africa, in some African countries, and in Europe, where we really talk about the role that leaders play in building this culture that I'm talking about. Now, I'm going to share with you what I call the 6 keys to building a great organizational culture. Now, these are not exhaustive, you know, that's how I package them as the 6. So, of course, the first one is your organization must have a compelling vision. Some people call it your why. You know, why do you exist? Why did you start what you started? Why do you do what you do? Now, your why, your vision must be so powerful and so compelling that when your business gets into trouble, when the sales drop, when you're affected by the economy, when somebody comes and designs exactly the same product like yours and they come and eat up on your market share, the things that's going to keep you together as an organization is because all of you are enlisting behind this vision. Now, a lot of people define vision in many ways, but I define vision as transcending through time to a desired destination. You know, what are you 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now? How do you transcend from now into that time and come back here and begin to live as if you have reached your vision? So that's what vision means to me. So it means it must be so powerful and so compelling that people must not only feel it here, they must feel it in their gut. They must understand that I'm part of something that is much more bigger than me. So that is the first solid building block, because without a vision, you know, your organization will perish. In biblical terms, they say a nation without a vision will perish. So an organization without a great and powerful and compelling vision will perish. So that's the first thing. Your vision must be powerful. And I remember, you know, meeting Jack Welch and asking him, you know, we were doing some work together in Florida. And I said, you know, Jack, what are the three most powerful things, or what are the three foundational things that leaders have to say and do all the time to get their troops to focus in the same direction? And the first thing that he said to me was, it is a leader's responsibility to consistently sell and communicate the vision to his people. So you cannot underscore a vision. And when people join your organization and people in that organization, they're not very passionate and excited about the vision, they're just going to show up like anybody else for their salaries and their bonuses, and they'll be able to create competition inside and create some funny things. So the first thing is you must have a very powerful and compelling vision. So that's the first. The second one, I'm going to put it here at the bottom. You must have what we call committable values. The operative word here is committable, because I work with a lot of organizations, and I work with exco, with boards, with supervisors, guys at the bottom, leadership and stuff like that. And then I ask people this question: so what are your values? You know, tell me about your values. And people, you know, it's like I've asked them an MBA question. If they fail it, they're not going to get an MBA. And people fumble, and I'm saying, if the leadership or people at the top echelon of an organization, when you ask them about their values, they fumble, they cannot just, you know, say it from their heart, then you know there's a problem. Because those values are not committable. They are just values that are in the reception, they are values that are in the annual report, they are values that are in the website, but nobody's put them into heart, and therefore nobody is measured on whether they live the values in your organization or not. Now, I like Zappos. I mean, Zappos, they've got 10 values, but I'm going to share with you one of the most profound that really got me to think. And that's why this word committable is very, very powerful and profound. Now, the last of the values at Zappos is be humble. Now, Tony Shea shares the journey that they took to get to these 10 values. They've got 10 values, and they live those values. And by the way, if you go online and Google one of the values from Zappos, Zappos becomes number one. And the fascinating thing is a lot of companies' values, when you put their value, they become 1,075,000, whatever, you know. So it means they're just values. You never thought about it. They never committed to them. They're not emotionally connected to them. So it's just something that they decided to put together. So Tony Shea, one of their values, the one that talks about humble, be humble, humility. What it means, it's a very simple thing. So Zappos is an organization that's based in Las Vegas. So everybody and anybody that comes for an interview flies in to Las Vegas and flies out at the end of the interview. And you come into the organization, and by the way, they court you for a couple of months before they bring you on for an interview. And on the day of the interview, anybody in the organization can interview you. It's not the HR and this, or the REMCO, or this committee. No. Anybody and everybody can say, hey, I'm available. I'd like to interview this guy for 30 minutes. That's how it happens. And at the end of the interviews, you know, you get taken back to the airport, you fly over, wherever you go. And they then say, whoever interviewed these people, please, let's have a round table meeting, and let's score our candidates. Which one is the coolest? Which one do you think is going to become a cultural fit? And they ask all kind of questions. This one says, I like this person, his experience, his passion, is this, you know. And then comes this committable value, humility, humble, be humble. And the last person that gets asked the question is the person who's the shuttle driver. They don't say to the shuttle driver, this candidate, they're this and this and this and this and this. We're excited about them. We think they're going to add value. They're going to become part of the Zappos culture. Now they ask the magical question. They say, how did this candidate treat you? Now, that is a very powerful question. If the shuttle driver says, this person was snobbish, never greeted me, never treated me well, boom, you're not part of this. They're not considering you at all. Because for them, somebody that's humble or that exudes humility is an important part of their culture. And this it's a committable value. It's who you are. Because I've seen in some companies, they say, oh, we're going to employ such and such a person, but we're told that this person is very funny, is very moody, but they are very good at their job. So we'll bring them in. That person is going to come and destroy your organization. I've seen it. I've seen super intelligent people that have a negative attitude and that came into an organization and created a very negative culture where people started stepping each other in the back, and eventually the company becomes the loser. And guess what? They take their CV and move to the next company. So the second thing is, how committable are your values? Are you willing to fire your people based on them transgressing their values? And earlier on in another video, I spoke about cultural fit. Now these committable values speak exactly about that. People have to be a cultural fit in your organization, because you can't train people for attitude, you can train them for skill. Get them with a powerful and committed attitude, it's easy for you to train them. But get the ones that are negative, no matter how qualified they are, it becomes difficult for them to change and have a very powerful attitude. So the second one is your committable values. The third one is, now that you have these values, is what I call relentless practice. Now, what do I mean by relentless practice? I mean measure the values, reward the values, fire people for the values, recognize people for the values. Now, if you do relentless practice of your values in anything and everything that you do, it becomes easy for them to become committable, because everybody that works for your organization, they know how important it is for them to become congruent personally on their value system and your value system. Because if there's no congruence between your personal values and the values of the organization that you're part of, there's going to be a problem ultimately, and things are going to fall apart. So the third thing is relentless practice of your value system. The fourth one, happy people. Again, this I learned from Jack Welch. He said the consequence of happy people is productivity. When people are happy, they produce, they're passionate, they show up on time, and they're committed, and they become creative. But if they're not happy, they just show up. They do just enough not to be called for a disciplinary hearing. Now, this one is fascinating, because how do you make people happy? Happiness is an intrinsic thing. It comes from within. It comes from inside. So this one becomes, all of these things that I'm talking about, every part of your organization, every person, it does not matter what your title is, it doesn't matter what level you are in, you've got to become part of this journey and part of this process of building your culture. So happy people, again, it means you've got to get out of the monkey business. Don't take other people's monkeys and make them your monkeys. You've got to make sure that you take care of your own monkey so that you're happy, and the consequence of your happiness, it means you treat other people happily. Now, Tony Alessandro, a good friend of mine from New York City, now lives in California, has a different rule, because there's this thing called the golden rule. And what is the golden rule? Treat people exactly the way that you want to be treated. Well, I think it's funny. I think this golden rule thing is a bit of a problem, because I want to be treated in the same way. What makes me think that the next person wants to be treated like me? He has something different. He calls it the platinum rule. He says, treat people the way they want to be treated. Isn't that fascinating? Don't treat people the way that you want to be treated. Treat people the way that they want to be treated. So therefore it means, for you to create a happy environment at your workplace, you've got to create a process where people move from being cultural critics to becoming interculturally intelligent. Now, what is the difference between these two? Cultural critics are people that says, my culture is superior, yours is inferior, so therefore you've got to listen to what I'm telling you, because there's nothing that you can tell me. So that person is called a cultural critic. An interculturally intelligent person is the one that seeks first to understand your culture before they let you understand their culture. And these are the people that understand that in any environment where there's a diversity of people, we are dealing with polarities. So intercultural intelligent people have got the ability to manage different polarities and therefore create harmony, and harmony leads to happiness of an environment, and therefore people become happy. So happiness It's a very key factor in building a very powerful culture. The fifth one is an inspirational narrative. Now, this one is very nice. What does it mean? It simply means, what is your story? It simply means, what is the story of your organization? Who started it? Why did they start it? What hurdles did they have to jump? Who mentored the company? Who helped you when in times of trouble? Who was your first client? How did things happen for you? What is the story? You know, when you're sitting around the fire, being an African, we like to sit around the fire and tell stories. So what is your story? What is the story of your company? And who are the storytellers? And eventually, can anybody articulate that story? A lot of us know the story of Coca-Cola, we know the story of Google, we know the story of Tesla, we know the story of Facebook, we know the story of the Chinese guy, Jack Ma, how he started, what is that big Chinese company that sells stuff online? Yes, that company, you know what I'm talking about? We all know the stories, but what is your story? How passionately connected are people to your narrative, and how inspirational is it? Because when all else fails, guys, the story keeps us together. Because if we just have to understand how this business was started, when the chips are down, we remind each other of the beginning of the story up to where it is now. And that inspires us to understand that we're going through just a lump, we'll be able to come back again and get to the top of our game. So what is your narrative and how inspirational is it? And by the way, you know, when you talk to people about these things, people think these things are by the way. I said, if you go to all these top organizations, Tesla, Google, or whatever, they've got their story written all over. It's a beautiful narrative. They've got books that they've produced. They've got docu-movies that they've produced out of their story. What is your story? In a lot of organizations, they've got inductions, you know. Inductions, they say, come, this is a policy, this is HR, this is what you do, this is safety, don't move this, don't do blah, blah. You know, all these things that are very dry and bony and very boring. But what about when somebody comes to your organization, the induction is a movie. It's a docu-movie. It tells the story with passion, with music, with sound, tonality, you know. I mean, it would be such a powerful thing to become part of, you know. It reminds me of a company that I'm helping to build their culture. Now, these people are in a safety environment. I'm not going to mention the company because, you know, you've got to get permission to do this. But they're in the safety business, basically. So I say to them, okay, so how do you celebrate a day without an incident? And what happened to a day when there's an incident? And they all gave me a blank face. Then I said, okay, let me tell you a story. And I said, by the way, I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to just create this story in front of you, and I want to see how you react. And I said, just think about it. You're going for an interview at this company. You're sitting down, and there's a panel in front of you, and they start asking you questions. And while you're in the middle of the question, there's a bell that rings or an alarm that goes off, and these people simultaneously all stand up and assume a certain position, take their heads down for a couple of seconds, and then from there get back and start doing what they were doing. I think if you're a smart person who's being interviewed, who's going to ask, excuse me, what just happened? And I said to them, can you imagine? An incident has just happened. And that alarm that rang reminded them that something bad has happened. So therefore they're standing up, putting their hands here and bowing their face in shame and feeling the pain of whoever is part of the fatality based on the accident that happened. Now, can you imagine how powerful that will become to you to think, oh my God, this organization is amazing. And the reverse of the story is they started working at 9 or 8:30, and it's 4:30, and 4:30 is the last shift, and nothing has happened. So that day was an incident-free day. And guess what? You're still there for an interview, you're a different person, and exactly 4:30 you hear an alarm ring, and you hear the most unbelievable noise. You hear music blaring, people, you know, throwing things in the air, like it's Christmas, like it's a massive celebration. And then you say, oh man, what happened? You know, they say, today was our incident-free day. Just think about how powerful that will sit in your heart to think that, oh my God, I want to become part of this organization. Why? Because that's part of their symbolism. That's part of organizational symbolism. And that's part of the narration. That's part of the story. So what is your story? So you've got to build your story and make it very inspirational so that people who become part of your organization, they can become part of this interwoven into the fabric of your organization. So the fifth one, of course, is an inspirational narrative. And the last one, which I'm going to put right in the middle here, which is our number 6, is to create a lively environment. Actually, this one I must just also play around with colors and just say boom, 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 you know, I don't have the time and the energy. I could have done something amazing just to show you that this is some kind of a je ne sais quoi. You know, just think about it. I mean, I go to organizations where the wall is gray, they've got dull blue seats at the reception, they've got a big desk like this, the receptionist is hanging out like this. Good morning, sir, can I help you? Just think about how terrible that is. You walk in, there's nothing, it's bland, there's no je ne sais quoi, there's no love, there's no passion. Just think about how boring that. It's like you're walking in a mortuary or in a government printing house. You know, government printing houses, they're like dark places where people can, you think there's going to be something's going to come after you. Now, creating a lovely environment means you bring in color. Bring color to your work environment, guys, because we spend over 65% of our time and our lives in our work environment. Make it lively. Bring some color, purple, red, yellow, green. Create some magic. You know, put the tiles that, put quotations on the wall. I don't know what you want to do. I don't know what it means for you, but create this vibe. You know, if you look at organizations like Google, Yahoo, all these organizations, people like to go there. Why? Because the environment is full of life. People, when they walk in there, they don't feel like going back home because home is boring and work is cool. I want to be here. So, you don't need to go and get an architect to come and break down the walls or whatever. You've got to let your people begin to help you create that lively environment. Bring toys. Bring toys. Tell everybody to bring their most favorite toy. Might be 60, 70, it doesn't matter. What was your favorite toy? Some of us had toys. Well, I grew up in a society where toys were bricks. If they say I must bring my toy, I'm going to have to bring a brick, unfortunately. But I'm joking, you know, I also like some stuff like Ninja Turtles and all these kind of things. So if you say to people, bring that thing that represents your space of happiness. It can be a pillow, it can be something. Because the only time that organizations are very colorful is on Valentine's or when they're doing their Christmas party, and during the year it's bland and boring. So the sixth building block of creating a very powerful culture is to make sure that your environment is lively. So let's go back to these six so that you can remember what they are. The first one, I said to you, you've got to build a very powerful and compelling vision that people can feel that they're part of and be passionate about. The second one, I said you must create committable values. It means your values must be truly committable. You must be willing to fire people or hire them based on their value system. The third one, I said, relentless practice of your values. Measure your values, reward people, fire them, recognize people based on, you know, the best value ambassador, the best cultural department ambassador, whatever you want to do to create this vibe where people are inspired to live the values. Okay, that's the third one. And what did I say the fourth one was? The fourth one was happy people. Create an environment where people are happy. You know, I mean, Nido Kubain, who was my coach a couple of years ago, in his university in High Point, they've got a department, and that department is called the Department of Wow. Their responsibility is to search for unwow things and make them wow. Why? Because they want to create a happy environment. So that's the fourth one. And the fifth one is, what's your story? What got you together? Why was this company created? What is that thing, that story that you talk about around the fireplace? What is it that you tell people? How do you induct your people into organizations so that they feel that they're part of something much more bigger than themselves? And lastly, create some, as the French say, je ne sais quoi, create some fun, put some color into your work. And I believe that if you take these six building blocks as they are, you'll be able to begin to build a very powerful organization that is a culture that people die to become part of. And guess what happened to companies like this? They don't recruit people. They attract the best talent. If your organization follows this six principle, people will show up and say, hey, I'm told that this is a beautiful place to work. Here's my resume. Please, when there's an opening, give me a call. So that's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. You can build an organization that is very powerful, that is a very powerful culture, because it has been proven over and over again that it's not your products that makes you superior, it's your culture. Hey, it's Selekane. Catch you next time. Peace and love.